Alright, I'd like to call this meeting to order at 5:31. So roll call attendance. Joseph Bryant is missing today. He's traveling. Josh Muchard, Renee Mankey, Brittany Wold, Dr. Shiver, Dr. Stanton, Gary F. Here, Sarah Feeney,
Here.
John Dehan, Jessica Evenson,
Here.
Nick Shuey, Renee Skiles, and Sharon Dustin. All here. Alright, go ahead and move on to agenda approval. Give you a. Okay?
Cash,
Yes.
they contacted me and they're not able to make the meeting and they have asked that we push it to next week.
So we don't need a motion for that because we don't have. We don't need a motion to take them off the agenda.
It would be a motion the agenda as.
Okay.
1511.
Any other additions, subtractions, corrections to the agenda? At this point, I entertain a motion to approve the agenda with the amendment of removing the PESH request.
So moved.
And is there a second? John Dehan seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried. Couple minutes here to go over the approval of last week's minutes.
Nick is in the attendance, and he's also been excused.
I did miss it. Thank you.
Any other additions to or subtractions to the minute, corrections to minutes? This time I entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended with the correction of Nick Shuey being only excused, not also in attendance. Jessica Evans.
So moved.
Jessica moves. Is there a second? Brittany seconds. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Nick Shuey abstains. Motion carried. Going to reports. I have no reports.
I guess my only thing is that we did circulate the supplemental funding into that.
Okay. We'll move to public comment. First call.
I have public comment.
All right.
I'm here with good news. First, hi, I've missed you all. I'm coming to look forward to these Wednesday evening times together. I came a few hours ago from a meeting with Anne Cuvillier, the director of the Douglas Honors College, and with our provost, Marilyn Levine. The provost recently found out about this request we had before you, and she wanted to talk to us to make 2 points. The first was, she thinks a program coordinator for SOURCE is important. Second, she doesn't think you should have to pay for it. And so, effective almost immediately, she has found money in her budget to pay for the staff position to keep coming and talking to you. Which is fantastic. I'm thrilled, both because it's paid for and because it seems good. Right? It's great if it comes from there. So this part of the request is off the table, which means we're here today to amend, to reduce what we're asking you for this year. And Kara has been working on figures for what that's going to be. We've been talking a lot the last couple hours trying to work this out.
So just because we do have, first of all, thank you. It is nice actually to kind of come back here and see you guys, but I appreciate you how seriously you're taking this. and how you did table it last week for further discussion. In running some numbers and in looking at trying to figure out, we do still have a number of sources that are uncertain. Somewhere between $15,000 to $18,000 from this committee for goods and services is all we would be asking for this year and would get us through very easily. And then, yes, we would not be coming back next year to ask for the source coordinator position again, because that is something that the provost has clearly been able to fund for multiple years. So, is that, you guys could then ask me further questions if you want to when it comes back up, right?
Correct. Once we get to the voting, if we have any questions, we can get to the gallery.
Okay, perfect. Thank you again. Thank you.
Any other further public comment? All right, seeing none, we can jump right into old business and supplemental funding request voting for the for source. So, is there any discussion on this?
So the revised figure again is what? I didn't write down.
I think you said 15 to 18.
15 to 18, sort of at your discretion.
Yeah.
Yeah, we probably. I know. I don't have a copy. It's sitting there.
Can we ask a question? So in the original request, it was $30,850, and you said that $20,800 of that was going to the programs coordinator. So why the jump from $10,000 for goods and services to 15 to 18?
Several things have come into play. We're now renting out the Wellington Event Center in addition to the CERC to expand our space for the one-day event. We had to do more postcard costs than we anticipated to be able to hand out to all the advising students. So I could easily get by with the 11,000, and I could cut a few things to help enable that. But so basically the amount to 15 to 18,000 was, oh boy, it'd be nice to have a little more wiggle room, but I would understand if that's not comfortable with
So you could get by with 11, though. You're saying?
yes, I could get by with 11.
Okay.
Definitely, I would be grateful for 11, very much so.
Sharon, I just want to know if those funds are not utilized, it comes back into the S&A account. Is that correct?
Well, they're a base funded thing.
Even with supplemental funding?
We've done it both ways in the past. So if you guys said if it's only to be on the supplemental request, that it's only to be done this year, then we could reconcile it that way. Typically, when we add to a base funding, we have not done that, but there's been a few times where we've done it both ways.
Is there any further discussion? Gary?
So one question I did have was, what exactly was covered with the money that you got? The money that you just received? Oh,
I haven't received.
From the provost, I think.
From the provost, she's
Are you
going
talking
to pay for the source coordinator position that's listed, and that's all she's going to pay for.
thank you.
But that's good.
What's the Wellington?
Oh, so the Wellington Event Center is affiliated with Bar.
Oh, it's in Bardo.
Yeah, so the business competition got bigger than this space allows.
Good.
So we're yeah. One of the reasons Source is going to 2 days is we've got some problems with space, and so now we have to supply things over there in addition to the circuit.
Is there any further discussion? I'd like to make a comment about this. It is in my opinion, if we are going to fund this for more than the requested amount, I think it'd be very important to the community to know the enumerated costs of those additional expenses. Like we already have it listed out here, just giving an extra, you know, does that make sense or does that make sense? Is anybody confused? So, $10,050 is the difference with that program coordinator position, correct? If we decide to fund it for the 15-18 is what has been asked for the augmented cost, I believe that it would be beneficial to our understanding of what we're using our funds for, if we know where those additions are occurring. For example, she said that like postcards, how much is that actually going to postcards? How much that is going out to space, renting and everything? As it is important for us to know in the initial request, I think it is just as important to know if we're going to augment more than what is enumerated. Does that make sense?
So basically, in the budget.
I would. The committee can do whatever they choose. If I was a voting member, that's how I would do it.
Well, she said 15 to 18, but then she said 11. Those are some kind of big gaps.
That's what I'm saying. You know, if we get, let's say it's 11, it's 11 right now, and we go 15, we're throwing an extra $4,000 on the top of it, which is a significant percentage of the initial cost of what
Right.
of the minimum, right? It's a significant percentage of that's being added, and we're doing postcards and renting space. Personally, I like to see where that's going. Dr. Shiver?
In lieu of that, though, we still have it spelled out for, did you say 10,000?
10,050.
10,050. So we could accept maybe a motion at least for that.
Yeah. I'd like to recognize Gallery. You had a
Oh,
comment?
yeah, I did. So we're happy to redo a budget if that's helpful, or to give money, do a budget if you pass something conditional upon getting a budget. On the other hand, if it's possible, if you have $15,000 and we can put it in base funding, we use the money well this year and it rolls over to next year, that's great too, right? That means we're not coming back next year to ask for as much. And at some point, it's hard to know exactly what this is going to cost, but it's going to be used well. Certainly for this, if there's a little extra expended this year or next year on a 2-day source, I'm sure you're not wasting your money either way.
We asked them a question.
Yeah.
Do you know how much it costs for Wellington for 1 day printout for the event?
No, because at this point, I don't know if we're only gonna need it for a half day or a full day. I haven't priced it out for S&A rates, because you guys would be paying with S&A dollars. As well, I don't know the additional catering costs and setup costs. So I am sorry, I don't have that data.
When source?
Source is in May, and I don't know the full count until submissions close in April. So it is a little difficult for me sometimes to price it out in advance.
Would it make sense if we approve today the 10,000? What's the figure? The 10,000, 10,050. I mean, source is not till May, and then they can come back with a solid figure, and we can then discuss that.
Yeah. I feel better. It's your Wednesday night.
You could put that in the form of a motion.
Well, what is that? What is the exact number?
10,050.
So on that note, I would like to make a motion to approve supplemental funding request 1508 for the amount of $10,050.
Is there a second for that motion? Jessica Evenson? Any discussion? Nick?
Should we amend it so that it becomes re-encumbered back into the S&A account at the end of base funding period?
I can't answer that question, but I can tell you you can ask to make a friendly amendment.
May I make a friendly amendment?
Yes.
To re-encumber supplemental funding request 1508's funds for all misused, or no, for all
Unspent.
unspent funds.
At the end of the
And then you have to accept.
Yes, I accept.
And then the other person has to, who seconded, you have to also.
I agree.
Okay. So the motion now is saying that the motion on the table is that we approve for the amount of $10,050 with the stipulation that we re-encumber all the funds that are not used. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passed unanimously.
I hope to see all of you at Source, either as presenters or participants.
See you in the coming weeks.
I could, it's true. Thank you.
Moving on to supplemental funding request, voting for supplemental request 1509, the ACP National College Journalism Convention, for the amount of $4,470.30. Table's open for discussion. Sarah?
I'm wondering if Maria's here. Did you guys get the SAS funding that you were requesting? You don't know yet? Okay. All right, thanks.
So it's always a big issue every year with the committee wondering, are they going to get Club Senate funding? Are they going to get SAS funding? And everybody worries, are we going to overfund them? And so I can assure you that the Search Accounting Office looks at all the funding entities and they take all of the receipts and they make sure that they don't get double funded, because that office handles the funding for all of those entities and they make sure that any overfunding goes back to the committee.
So if we funded them X amount of dollars and they ended up getting an extra 1,500, we would get that back that we
Correct.
covered? Okay.
Correct.
Did you say that, just remind me about the participation in the conference, as far as the students, is there
Yeah. So we've got
training sessions or
there
competitions?
there are some short courses and kind of boot camps that are more intensive, and those are really important for people who are going to be editor-in-chief over the next year, and that training has just proven to be invaluable. And then, so there's a sprinkling of those, and every attendee will go to one of those more intense training sessions, but then other than that, they're these hour-long, it's like a regular conference with training. But, David Carr, the media reporter for the New York Times, is the keynote. There are all sorts of people leading sessions from the Los Angeles Times and the Huffington Post, and it's, they will learn so much and they'll get such great feedback on their work and on paper. It's a really intense Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then till Sunday at noon conference. I think, though, actually, after kind of checking out the airline stuff, they're probably going to have to scoot out Sunday morning early, but Sunday's a little, they'll only be missing a couple of sessions. They'll get a really full plate of training in those 3 days. And I also want to remind you all that this is both Pulse and Observer, so you are benefiting two different S&A funding media outlets.
Just a quick question: what kind of level of networking goes on at this for professional development?
There's a lot of opportunities. They have special mixers for students to meet with professionals. You can sign up to have a professional critique your portfolio of work one-on-one. I know people who've made, a few years ago, Catherine Mozart, EIC, met her she got a Huffington Post internship from going to that conference. And so it happens. It happened a couple of years ago. I'm excited because I have connections at the LA Times that I'm going to be connecting our photo editor with a couple of professional photographers at the LA Times. He's just pretty excited.
And how many students are going again?
We've asked for 10, I believe. Yeah. And again, just all but a couple are going to be back next year for the full year, if not even longer. And nobody who went last year is going again. We're We don't send people one-to-one.
One more question. You, forgive me if you've already just said this, but I remember last time you talking about there being like a competition or something.
Yeah, they have a best of show
Okay.
contest, and last year we were third place, which is kind of a feather in your cap when there's 800 schools represented.
Yeah. Big feather.
Yeah. I take 800 students, not 800 schools. Still,
Yeah.
there's probably 100 schools.
I'm just looking at this, so if we funded the 5970, that's about, so there's 10 students going, that's $600 a student. It seems like it's a pretty good cause, but then if SAS could get approved, it goes down to the 4470, so we would get that $1,500 back, and it's only $447 a student. And it seems, okay, I'm just talking out, you guys, it seems like a pretty good deal. It's not like a field trip like the fashion thing was. They're not just going to, hang out, they're actually getting something out of it.
We purposely go to this conference instead of, there's a big one in New York City over spring break, but that costs 3 times as much, and so we like to go to the West Coast. Maryland.
Josh.
So, I agree. I think I like the trip. It seems like they try to get the most out of it as they can. So that being said, I'd like to make a motion to approve supplemental funding request for the journalism convention in the full amount of $59.70.
I'll second that.
Motion on the table. Is there any other discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor for the approval of funding request 1509 for the amount of $5,970.30. Any opposed? Touch ever opposes?
No, I raised my hand.
Oh, okay.
Kinda late,
Okay,
right?
Bill's late.
Slow race, slow race.
Any opposed?
Slow reflexes in my age, I'm sorry.
Any abstentions? Motion is passed unanimously. Sorry about that, Todd.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Looking forward to the trip.
All right, now we move on to new business. Supplemental funding request presentation for supplemental funding request 1510, the Chi Conference of Climate Change and Natural Hazards. Let's see if they're up back. Nick? Huh? No.
I move to table supplemental funding request 1510, Chi Conference Climate Change and Natural Hazards until the next S&A.
Second.
Is that because there's no here?
There's no
Yeah.
Dr. Shriver seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. We just have to send them a letter.
Say when's husband?
If they don't show up, what if they don't show up next week? Table it.
February, they still might have time.
All right, now we can move on to other business. Communications received, the auditor's report. So I hand over to Sharon.
Everybody have their copy of the auditor's report? I think one of the most important things to point out here, so first of all, is everybody familiar with what the administrative fee is? It's something that's been around for a while. Before people get really worked up over the numbers in the back, because sometimes people, me being the number person, tend to get drawn right to the numbers, but there are a couple of really important sentences in here. Let me see if I can find it. one is in third paragraph, it says, we determined that for the most part, the administrative costs allocated through the S&A fee were reasonable, equitable, and fully supported, and the costs provide a direct link to student benefit. And that's something that the students historically really went back and forth on, and it was really clear within a lot of the guidelines that there had to be a direct benefit. And the administration, there was a lot of back and forth to ensure in the way the individual calculations were and stuff. For instance, in the first year, where we started with the calculations, because this was fairly new, a little history is, and this wasn't due to any malice or any misinformation. It was a new process here at the university. But the first year's calculations were based off of overall percentage rates. And through a lot of back and forth between the students and the administration and bringing in state auditors and attorney generals, and there was conflict resolution involved and stuff, but it came down to there had to be shown a direct link of the service in which they were being provided. And so a good example of that is if the S&A service or activity being charged for the administrative cost of payroll, there has to be a direct link in the way that's being calculated and the service being provided. So payroll is a very easy one to show that link. So, and I didn't state that real great, but
So
okay.
the text of 28B really, they bring up right at the beginning that that's the part that says that the fees collected are not to be used for general
Right.
overhead. And so if they can demonstrate a direct benefit, then it's not general.
Correct.
That's, I mean, it's another way around getting to, I think, what you were trying to say.
Correct. So when some of the things that were being charged, there wasn't a direct benefit, and the calculation itself was very generalized in the calculation method as well. So they had to fine tune the methods and the items that were directly being charged. So there were two different fronts as they kept fine tuning these calculations. And Pat, feel free to keep chiming in here.
Oh, no, you're
So I'm trying to think of a good example of what would be generalized
well,
services.
advertising for the university, right? I mean, you can say,
So I just want to know
Mhm.
what the implications are of using the 2011 data versus the 2012 data when you're talking about
Mhm.
expenses. Because you said they used percentages of the S&A fee to cover
Mhm.
accounts payable, payroll, budgeting, human resources, information technology, etc.
So how that came about was because we have a 4-year funding cycle, and those calculations were based off of, we established the funding cycle based off of a 4-year, so they used data for 4 years. We don't go back and redo our base funding every year. And so when they looked at the direct benefit and the direct calculations, there's discrepancies. And so I don't really know personally how we resolve that, or if it does have to be resolved.
In my mind, meaning the 2011 costs are going to be least, they're going to be less than the 2012
You are
costs.
correct.
So as time goes on, costs are only going to increase, not become
More
not
than
decrease.
likely, yes.
Yeah.
So this comes to that point of, do the students and the committee want to bring in somebody for an opinion? Do we sit and wait and say, what's the response of the university to this? Does this just sit and say, thank you for your opinion? Go ahead.
it's a question,
Uh-huh.
so the first time they started,
Mhm.
taxing us, that,
Right.
whatever that is, and then the first audit they had, didn't they make the university pay S&A back like 600,000 or something?
Approximately, I don't know the total, if that's the right amount.
It was several hundred thousand,
Because it
so it was
was
a
going to
couple
the
hundred
general.
thousand a year. The first year it was around 791,000, and then it was around 500. So it brought the first year down to around, don't hold me to these numbers, and it might be better if we just put this on the agenda where I can bring the actual numbers. We got a significant credit at the,
A reduction in the fee.
correct.
Because they were charging us for some things that were deemed general.
It was two different things. It was some things that they said there was not a direct benefit in the items being charged for, so general. And there were some things that the calculation, they thought the calculation itself was too general. So there were two different things in the way that they looked at it in the audit.
So if we've been down that road,
Mhm.
then now with this audit, since we've already been down that road, I mean, it's not saying that the university owes us money or anything, right?
The letter doesn't ask for actually any response from the university.
Says it seems to be legit.
It just kind of leaves it there.
Yeah,
Which is really kind of a bad, I can't say, it's not a bad letter, it just kind of leaves the students hanging, leaves the university hanging to say, well, okay. I mean, it says that in general, nobody did anything wrong. It's, do we just leave it? Do the students want to write a letter back saying, thank you? Do you want to ask George Clark to say,
is it normal?
Is it normal to like write a letter like this without
oh yeah,
some
Yeah.
action?
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
pretty common.
sometimes you would get out nearly nothing back in the letter. They would say whatever they researched was unfounded. This is kind of the middle. And then there's another one where they say,
You're not in compliance.
and you need to do this supposed to become in compliance. So this is kind of in the middle.
Like a warning kind of? Or?
It's not
No,
really
actually, if you read it, it
Yeah, I mean, it seems
says,
friendly.
It's a recommendation.
it says the university's doing better. And it says that in general, but it did call out a couple things in the back. And I'm not, I work for the university in the finance, but I have nothing to do with the S&A stuff at all. I basically, what I know is about what I've read in nature. I work in different parts. But I was at the exit, as was Robert Mosier, who I believe was on the committee last year. Wasn't?
Yes, he was.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I asked for some clarification on some of these numbers in case it came up. And then in general terms, I asked, are you recommending any action? And got really no answer. So they're not saying, with the exception of, it says the university should be using usage activity from the same year as the department expenses. Doesn't say have to, it says they should.
Which really doesn't go with our 4-year funding model.
Yeah.
I can clarify one thing for the committee as far as the university did not provide enough support for the cost allocation adjustment of the $45,085. As the bookkeeper for the S&A committee, because there were different pockets of people providing data, and I may have been out sick, or I may have been somewhere floating around during different things, because I sit in a different building. I do have actual data that ties out those numbers. So if from a committee perspective, does that statement concern me? it doesn't concern me, and I have forwarded on some backup for those numbers sent to my supervisor, just as an FYI.
Right, and I asked at the exit, there's two large numbers and they have dollar signs in front of them. Are they of the same nature? Right? Even though they're both dollar amounts. The top one, they didn't say anything was questionable about. It says that they appear, those charges appear reasonable, but no one produced for the auditors the documentation that they would hope to see, which now we subsequently Sharon's sent out. The second one is of a different nature. You can read for yourself what it says here, but it just says resulting in an overstatement of the allocation by this amount. And I don't know, after listening to Sharon talk about the 4-year funding cycle, is this 64,000 in one particular year?
So,
I mean, I just don't know the answer to that.
my understanding of that particular thing, it came up from the county of the computers. But I don't even know from that. Would we, if we went back and redid the adjustments every year and looked at every single year cumulatively to say costs are always going to be less, I would say that's highly unlikely.
Right. That's kind of the guy's logic that it would
Yeah.
go down.
I mean, you just look at cost of living and minimum wage and you can, that's not logical. Just looking at those two key parts. But we're not gonna tell you guys, you should ignore this letter either, as a committee. We can log it in and say, you know, it's interesting. We can say, you know, we can ask for more information. We can say, you know, this is, we're glad that the auditors have looked at it and stuff, and it is being reviewed, and from an overall general perspective, they are saying that nothing's been done grossly. There's no inappropriate or overstatements that are things that, you know, you could go as far as to say, Alan Smith, we would like to pay you to come and give us your assessment of what this letter is. I mean, this is part of the learning process of sitting on this committee. I mean, is there anything, I guess we should say, is there anything in this letter that makes you guys feel uncomfortable or like you feel something needs to be done?
I got future or more information on regarding, like what Patrick said. It was about the $64,000 allocation.
Okay.
We don't know if that's a 1-year allocation over a course of 4-year base, or really any more beyond the fact that it's a value. And without any more information, we can't really make a decision on how to further this conversation.
So would you like to ask for more information on that calculation, or what went into that
Yeah.
value?
Yeah, I think more information on both of the values that are given with the overstatement and cost allocation, and was just the overstatement of the allocation be important for this committee to review?
The 64,000 and the 45,000.
Yeah, it's directly about it.
And I can provide the 45 because that comes back with the payroll. So what that is there is a credit given directly for the payroll that in the circuit accounting office. So it has to do with, because of the charges, there's a credit given back to that, so that's something that's easy enough to provide. So I think that,
So how would that
Is it,
go?
We asked for further clarification.
How do
Yeah.
you do that? Do you write a letter?
I think that we would need a motion and somebody, to request somebody to draft a letter for the committee to review. And would the letter go to Ann Strand? Is that that's who did the thing, or to Troy Kelly, or to ask the administration to provide that, or would we, I wasn't at the audit.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
To Joel?
Well, this letter was to the president from Ivan, who works at the state auditor's office, and it was CC'd to these people. So me, I think you could write the letter to all of them, or at least a few on the list. I don't know that you would get anything back from any of the board members. They obviously wouldn't have the missing documentation or detail. I think I would probably,
George Park.
yeah.
I think it's important that
Could-
the tone of the letter be very respectful and non-confrontational, that we're trying to educate on the process, given that there's been history here that you guys are all new, and are just trying to understand the contents of the letter.
John?
So if we wrote them a letter, asking for clarification of this 64,000, what difference would it make if that were, like how Nick was saying, 1 year over 4 years? What difference would that make if they say, no, that was just a 1 year number, or that was spaced out over 4 years? Like, what would that matter? What would the
Nick?
outcome of that be?
Huh? With Joel. I think from my understanding, I think it would be, how much money is going every fiscal year, basically. Because if it's 64,000, it's a much bigger number than 15,000, and how it gets addressed, and is it a minor error, or is it something that's really wrong?
So if it were that
Per
case, if it were the 64, what would our step be? What would we do? Vote on it, or?
I think it's what Sharon just said, kind of answer that question. It's kind of to educate, and so we are kind of in the loop about that. Obviously, we are not we are a recommending body. We're not a body that has any teeth that can, but we are a recommending body to.
What if you took these, what if you looked at asking it for a clarification, will you be adjusting your assessment / calculation of how you do the desktop replacement calculation in the future? Or something, so that if it is inflated in the future, it's no longer inflated, or it's more precise, or something along that line. Or if you're zeroing in on that number. I mean, it seems to me if that's one of your concerns, that would be one of the things you don't want it to be a continued problem.
And I think that given the fact providing Sharon's data for the 45,000, the 64,000, it'd be like, hey, we can solve this half of the problem. Can you come and help us solve this, or help us understand the other half of the problem?
So would we be able to get money back, or is that a possibility?
I'm not I wouldn't.
I can't.
No
Yeah.
idea.
I know we don't know.
We, nobody could know.
so, what's the motion that needs to be made for that then, to get that more information? How would?
Somebody needs to motion to have a letter written by an individual from the committee. That gets approved by the committee, it is our voice, and then we would send that letter through the appropriate channels.
Maybe to, what do you think, Joel or Joyce?
Well, you can send it to both. You can pick everybody that works here. You can include one or two of the people from the state auditor's office that are listed here. Not Troy Kelly, he's an elected official. Unlikely to, but you could, Ivan Danzero and Sarah, I don't know. I don't know what they, you could CC them, but I think that any action, any response you would get from the university would probably come from George. Right?
If we make this motion, who here wants to write the letter? Does it have to be somebody?
Nick said he would write it.
Oh, Nick, okay.
So is there a motion on the table?
I'm trying to think of how to word it again. Okay, I move that we have Nick Shuey write a letter addressing, how do I say that, addressing the issue of the $64,000 or just questions about the auditor's report. Okay.
It can be general.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so then I move to make a motion for Nick Shuey to write a letter regarding questions the committee has on the auditor's report, and then to be reviewed by the committee and then sent to the proper channels.
How about reviewed and approved?
Reviewed and approved by the by the committee, and then sent to the proper channels.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? Brittany Wold seconds. Any further discussion, questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Patrick Stanton abstains. Motion's carried.
Hey, Nick.
It'll be done next week.
All right, we can move on to section 10, public comments, second call. Seeing no public comment, before I entertain a motion for adjournment, I'd like to remind everybody that our next meeting will be next week, February 11th, here at 5:30 p.m. And go Seahawks. I entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting at 6:18 p.m. Nick, is there a second? Josh seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried. Meeting adjourned.